Good morning, everybody. The 2024 NHL season has officially concluded. The Florida Panthers are your Stanley Cup champions. Just like everyone thought 10 days ago, they just had to make it a little bit more dramatic. But this is Morning Cup of Hockey. That's Colby Cohen. I'm Johnny Lazarus. We are presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet on Betway. Please play responsibly. And remember, you must be 19 years of age or older. And Colby and I will be doing today's show. Then we will be heading right to the airport to go to Las Vegas for the 2024 NHL draft. There's a lot happening, a lot going on in a very short amount of time. So get ready, hockey fans, because Colby and I will be bringing you all the action from the 2024 draft in Vegas from June 26th to the 28th. We've got wall-to-wall coverage, exclusive interviews, and expert analysis from your favorite hosts. Whether you're at home, at work, or on the go, stay connected with our live updates and in-depth reports. Don't miss a moment of the excitement as the future stars of the game take center stage. So tune into Morning Cup of Hockey, your ultimate destination for the 2024 draft. Catch the latest episode on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show. We already got a poll up for our chat if Connor McDavid did deserve the Conn Smythe or not after having 0 points in Game 6 or Game 7. We're not going to make this show about Connor McDavid. At least we'll try not to, because we want to give the Florida Panthers all their flowers. They were the best team for the majority of the season. They were the better team last night. They had the better goaltending last night. And Colby, your initial thoughts on Game 7 and the Florida Panthers being Stanley Cup champions?
Well, I honestly, my initial thoughts and how I felt about that hockey game was that the Florida Panthers really kind of got back to that team that makes it so difficult to generate anything from the middle of the ice, and they really came out and set a tone early. And I know there were some ebbs and flows early in that hockey game, and then obviously the big push in the third period by Edmonton, which you would expect. But look, I want to kind of hit a tweet that I put out last night that upset a lot of Oilers fans. It really did. A lot of people were really upset in the mentions. And I'm laughing because it's, if you read what I said, I gave Stuart Skinner all the credit for having a great playoff. Games 4 through 7, Skinner's save percentage, his record, his goals against, all of that was remarkable, for a guy that had to answer a lot of questions throughout the season, and really throughout his time so far in Edmonton. Could he do it in the big moments? Could he win? And look, they can win with him. They proved last night that they can get to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals with Stuart Skinner. However, and I'll read the tweet for those of you who are only audio listeners. The difference tonight is a big-time performance by Bobrovsky versus a goal that Skinner should have had. Okay, and I said probably had, but the more I looked at it, the more I think that he 100% should stop that, right? So credit to Skinner for how good he was otherwise, but to me, this is why paying a goalie is worth it. If you have one of these elite top-tier guys, and I know not every team has the ability to have one, and I know a lot of teams' new philosophy is we don't need to pay goaltenders. We can just have a couple of guys making $6 million together. But all I'm saying is in the biggest moment, in the biggest game, 82 plus 6 regular season plus another 25 or more playoff games, right? We're talking 100 plus NHL games comes down to 3 periods. You can't really draw it up any better if you're the NHL. Okay, you've got the biggest star in the game versus a team who hasn't won, brand new practice facility. It seemed like people really got behind the Florida Panthers when they were good this season. And really the last couple of seasons, there's been really good support. But at the end of the day, okay, Sergei Bobrovsky makes a number of saves in that game, and that's the difference. It is 100% the difference. He looked every bit a $10.5 million goalie, whether it was the Bouchard one-timer on the 5-on-4, whether it was the multiple assaults that he faced late in the third period. And look, the second goal that Reinhart scored, and Johnny, we don't have to do it this second, or we can do it this second. We can look at the video and talk about it, courtesy of Sportsnet. This is not a good goal. And it's not played well by Edmonton. And we'll go through the video of it for you here. And Vic, if you want to stop it right here, look, do you prefer Kulak to have a little bit of a tighter gap here at this point? You know, Kulak is the defenseman closest to us, right? Yeah, sure. But as a defenseman, you're taught to do your best to play inside the dots. You don't want to start running out to the walls, especially on a potential 3-on-2. And Warren Foegele is the back checker on the far left side. And while he is involved, and there are six players, if anything, you really have 4 white jerseys to 3 red jerseys in this frame. As this play develops, Foegele does not do a good enough job of going with Barkov and back checking. Okay. The middle defenseman, who's Cody Ceci, he needs to surf the middle a lot harder and catch up to the middle lane drive. I off the top of my head, I forget who the middle lane Verhaeghe. And that would give Kulak the ability to then challenge this rush. Now go ahead and roll this clip a little bit, Vic. Right here, stop it. Okay. This is when trouble really ensues. And I'll let you talk here in a second, Johnny. But as defensemen, you have to communicate. Cody Ceci needs to be yelling to Kulak, I've got Verhaeghe or I've got center lane drive. You can then push out. If you communicate that to your D partner, if you're Cody Ceci, then Kulak realizes, all right, now I can go confront the puck. But the biggest issue right now is that Leon Draisaitl stopped skating. And to me, Foegele is not coming back hard enough. So Sasha Barkov on the far side is still very dangerous here if there is a pass off pads, Johnny.
I just wanted to add one thing because Leon Draisaitl, and not to skip ahead, is the one who eventually ends up going towards Reinhart because he sees Kulak backing in. But the way I was taught as a forward, you always back check through the middle because right now in the frame, you can't really see it, but you don't know what kind of second wave of offense the Panthers have. So if Draisaitl does go out to the walls, who knows if Reinhart then throws a saucer pass to the middle to a defenseman coming right down Broadway, for a wide open lane to the net. So I think Draisaitl, eventually, like I said, he goes to Reinhart, but he is in the right position here. Like to me, obviously Barkov is a little bit ahead of Foegele on the far side of the screen there, but Draisaitl is in a good position right now. And if you look at this frame, this doesn't look all that dangerous to me if you're the Edmonton Oilers. It doesn't.
Yes. Well, look, I that's where we part ways here, Johnny. Yeah. And the one thing I will tell you, like when I played in the Bruins system, even the year of the Stanley Cup, we were not back checking the middle. That was not Claude Julien's system. That was not the way we were playing structurally. You were taught to if you're the first man back, especially in a situation where it's a 3-on-4, because that's what it is.
Yeah,
right?
but let me ask you one thing. You're telling me right now, the way this frame looks, you'd prefer Draisaitl to go toward the puck carrier over Kulak right now?
No, absolutely not, because he's a lot closer.
Yes,
Kulak is in a much better position, but all I'm saying here is Draisaitl never really skates hard. Okay. He's not taking hard strides. He's not putting back pressure. Right. But again, they're still okay. Yeah. To me, the biggest issue is communication by the defenseman. All right. If you're going to get beat on, Reinhart making a beautiful sauce pass, like an unbelievable highlight through 2 pairs of skates and shin pads, play to Barkov on the far side. But, roll the clip a couple more and then stop it, Vic. Right here, these two in the front, they duplicate on Verhaeghe, all right? And they give up a shot that, honestly, on a 3-on-2 or a 3-on-3, this isn't a bad shot to give up. On a 3-on-3, it's not a good shot because you shouldn't be given that much time and space on a 3-on-3 or even a
3-on-4. Yeah.
Or a 3-on-4. So, look, Kulak is to blame here as well. But, these things happen so quickly on the ice. These, it's easy. We're sitting here, we're freezing it, we're talking, we're freezing, we're talking.
And this was my least favorite thing as a player when coaches would freeze frame something because it happens so fucking fast. And it's obviously easier just to freeze a video and show what's wrong.
But all I'm going to say here is this is really bad communication by the defense. The defensemen are supposed to be communicating not only with each other, but to the back checkers. I don't see either of them pointing with their hand. I don't see either of them really heads on a swivel, because if they did, they would realize that they were duplicating, and you just can't do this. Now, having said all of that, very, very poor job by the Oilers defending this rush, right? But at the end of the day, and you can roll it, Vic, this shot is pretty harmless. Skinner can see the puck. He's on the outside of the house and it hits him, and you can roll it until the goal happens. He's got to come up with that save. And that was part of my tweet, was that Skinner was phenomenal. Games 4 through 7, he was good in the playoffs when it mattered. But the difference in that hockey game is a leaky goal versus a goalie who stood on his head when needed to. And that's all the difference is because, look, we could go back and find 1 or 2 rushes that the Florida Panthers didn't play well, right? We could find defensive errors or bad pinches. I mean, look at the breakaway. Exactly. Right off the hop of the game, they make a similar play where Ekblad doesn't surf the middle and they get behind them and get a breakaway goal. So the margin for error is so thin, Johnny. And that's where you need a goalie in a game 7. You can't let up a soft goal like that. Yeah, and to me, that was a soft goal. I'm not blaming Stuart Skinner. 1 goal is not enough to win. But last night in game 7, it was the difference.
No, and you're not alone in this too. Like Alan Hahn, who's a good friend of mine, he does great work with ESPN. He does Get Up. He works with MSG a lot with the Knicks, but a big hockey fan. His son actually plays for UNH. He tweeted the clip of the goal and said, "Hate this goal, not in a game 7." Yeah. And that's kind of, I thought what most people would think. Like, that's not a goal you typically see in this kind of moment. And it was backbreaking after the Oilers had a lot of good pressure in the second period as well. Like, Kulikov makes a great defensive play right before that. And then that sequence was outstanding.
It was a great sequence. But look, it's a 2-1 win, a game that, give Florida a lot of credit. And look, it's why we talked about this on the show yesterday. And I said this to Tyler. Game 7, I think momentum went right out. I don't think their momentum meant anything. It was 3 periods, 60 minutes. Everyone's nervous. Everyone feels pressure. There's no home ice advantage or disadvantage in that setting. And, and that's what we saw. We saw a game that looked like it could have been 6-5 the first 5-6 minutes.
And then all of a sudden,
things got real tight, real quick. And guys were making hard, heavy plays on the walls. You didn't see a lot of unnecessary pinches. You didn't see a ton of odd man rushes. There was a couple of power plays, but it wasn't a parade to the box. It wasn't a big physical, like open ice hitting type of game. That game was won and lost along the walls, battles. That's where the physicality was, right? It wasn't in any open ice, massive hits that could have been deemed a 5-minute penalty or whatnot. So look, the Florida Panthers get their cup, man. I mean, talking to my cousin who lives down there, he said, I remember when they were giving tickets away for free. And it wasn't that long ago, right? It really wasn't. So hopefully this creates a massive boom for hockey in South Florida. And this video is courtesy of Sportsnet. You just kind of see the way they ragged this game out. But, Florida Panther hockey, man, they make it difficult. They make it heavy. And look, they took away the middle of the ice last night. McDavid, everything was along the peripheral. Nugent Hopkins, peripheral. There just wasn't anything going for the Edmonton Oilers in the middle of the ice. And that's all about how Florida wins. That's how they shut down Pasta, Zibanejad, Panarin, you name it, Johnny.
But I still think I haven't seen any of the stats from that game, and I know you hate the expected goals or whatever, but I could think of at least 3 or 4 chances that Edmonton had off the top of my head where I was sitting there thinking, how the fuck did that not go in?
Well, the one late,
McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, Montour makes a great play. I forget which defenseman came in and slid in and kind of blocked the net there, but I actually saw a different angle, I believe, on Sportsnet as well, where Bobrovsky actually gets it with his glove. Hyman gets a weaker poke at it, and I don't know if it was enough to get over the line, but Bobrovsky did make that save, which was insane. And then Evan Bouchard late in the game too, he has a wide open net. Bobrovsky scrambling. Luosterainen makes an incredible block. I'm sitting there like the whole third period, I really thought Edmonton was going to find a way to tie the game. I did. And I'm not saying that, Florida was scrambling or playing poorly, but I think in the third as well, Sean McDonough mentioned on the broadcast, there was a 13-minute span or maybe even 14-minute span where Florida didn't even attempt a shot. They were really sitting back and defending their lead. and Edmonton had a great push. I mean, McDavid, it felt like he was out there for 11 minutes of the third period.
Well, they looked exhausted.
Yeah,
at the
they were
end.
dead.
I mean,
they were dead.
The amount of times they tried to come up the ice, and they could barely get into the offensive zone, and they were just easily getting pushed off the puck. It just showed you how exhausted they were. And that comes down to managing guys' ice time. Like against a team like the Florida Panthers, I know you want to have McDavid on the ice for 11 or 12 minutes of the third period, but that's why you can't do it.
Yeah. And he finished with a little bit north of 25 minutes on the ice, which, but like it's game 7. It's everything.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I do. I get it. But he looked exhausted at the end. I mean, he loses that puck in the neutral zone. He gets pushed off a puck. You could just tell they didn't have, the freshness that they needed there during that push, right? They were just a little bit like, what's the expression? A dollar short, a day late, a dollar short, something like that. It's kind of what, how they were playing in that last scramble of that third period, just short.
What?
Well, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Bill Zito and the way that they built this team and how
they shook up the hockey world 2 years ago.
How different this team could look next year. I mean, look, you've got a defensive core, and I think Sylvain Lefebvre deserves a lot of credit, who runs the defense for the Florida Panthers. He played in the NHL. I actually had him in Colorado as a coach, and he's a smart guy. He definitely can help you get better. But you look at this D-core. Aaron Ekblad was the first overall pick. He makes $7.5 million. This for another year at least. I think he has one more year after this. Then you've got Gustav Forsling, a waiver claim. Then you've got Montour, who they traded a third-round pick for to Buffalo. Kulikov, a UFA signing on July 1. OEL, UFA signing on July 1. And Nico Mikkola, who played for the New York Rangers, who would have looked damn good in a New York Ranger jersey this year in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Another UFA signing.
Thanks for rubbing that one in.
How often do GMs swing and a miss on July 1 and overpay guys, right? And give contracts that come back to hurt you? Well, he did the opposite, all right? He signs those guys. He signs Evan Rodriguez to a 3-year, $3 million a year deal. Every move that he made paid off for this season. Mm-hmm. And he deserves a lot of credit for that, because every year GMs take swings. Rarely do they pay off. Rarely. From July 1 and the trade deadline, those are the 2 days, generally speaking, GMs make the biggest mistakes for their entire season, or potentially more than that, Johnny. And when you can have a D-core where you've got less than $12 million committed to an entire D-core, okay? $11.92 million. OEL goes back to playing like a very, very formidable NHL defenseman. Kulikov, okay? Mikkola. They get put into a system where they say, be aggressive, stay in the dot within the dots, and get the puck north. Don't overhandle it. Don't overthink it. Play fast and play north. They played fast. They played north last night. There was no east-west. Okay, they got their forwards the puck in transition. They got moving up the ice. But $11.92 million in cap space for that D-core. Let me just give you that in comparison, okay? Mm-hmm. Just to throw this out there. You look at the Toronto Maple Leafs, okay? How much money does Willie Nylander make? How much money does Austin Matthews make? That's one player, okay? You have a whole D-core that makes less than those guys. Look at how much money Charlie McAvoy makes, $9.5 million. Darnell Nurse makes $9.5 million on the cap, right? He basically makes $2.5 million less than the entire defensive group for the Florida Panthers. So, and I know Paul Maurice came in and changed the way they played, and he gets a lot of praise, but Bill Zito gave him some serious tools to work with the way he constructed this team. And look, you've got to find a little bit of money somewhere, because you do pay your goaltender a lot. And this is why they have 10 UFAs and 2 RFAs And I got to tell you, their decor could look totally different. Montour, OEL, Kulikov, they're all UFAs. You're not getting all three back. Okay. But for this year, in this time, Zito, man, this guy did a wizardry, a wizard full, or I'm making words up right now, but
Yeah.
he did an incredible job of constructing balance on this roster.
Yeah. And I think a big thing too, I mentioned it probably a million times in the playoffs also, but the trades they made, the risks they took, like
Tarasenko, Okposo, both on the ice in Game 7.
But even just the guys like, two guys who scored last night, Verhaeghe and Reinhart, those are guys that I've said this, I feel like 5 times throughout the playoffs, but Paul Maurice has said it so many times too in the press conferences that I was sitting in. The Florida Panthers are made up a lot of guys who couldn't find a home elsewhere to the teams that drafted them. And you can say other organizations somewhat gave up on them a little bit early, but they came to Florida and found a home. And I saw a clip circling around this morning. It was Sam Reinhart actually calling Kevyn Adams, after he was traded away from Buffalo and thanking him for everything that Buffalo did for him. And he felt like he didn't deliver enough for the Buffalo Sabres. And Kevyn Adams says after, like, that was a great phone call. Like, I'll always be rooting for him. Like, what a stand-up guy. And, I think Buffalo fans like gave Reinhart a lot of shit too. Like when he was there and, he ends up scoring the Stanley Cup winning goal in Florida, has an incredible season this year. Just seeing guys turn their career around, is always something I feel like a lot of former players can be happy with. A lot of fans in general can be happy with. I mean, Colby, you and I both know, different scenarios, but what it's like when shit does not go your way as a player. And it is so hard, just like it is in life. Honestly, it's, when life isn't going your way, you think it's never going to be good again. And, you got to just keep holding on to hope. And then one day, hopefully things click and it does go your way, but it doesn't happen for everybody. And the fact that the Panthers had these guys like a Verhaeghe, a Reinhart, a Lomberg, a Montour, Forsling claimed off waivers. I saw Forsling. Huh?
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I saw Forsling had more Conn Smythe votes than Bob.
I just saw Frank Saravalli released the voting. One person didn't vote for McDavid as the Conn Smythe.
Get into that in a second.
Let's save that for the end.
Yeah.
What about Verhaeghe? Like, let's talk about him for a second.
Mm-hmm.
All right. He has a great start to the playoffs. He gets the overtime goal in series 1. He's scoring the power play's clicking. And then look, he gets taken off the power play, the top power play before Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. And I got to tell you, Emily Kaplan did an interview with him after the first period where she kind of mentioned that to him, and he didn't seem pleased with that question. The look on his face. Right. I mean, she I give her credit for
doing her job,
No, I agree. I'm going to give her credit for asking the hard question, but he very easily could have completely shut it down. And look, nobody's going to shut it down, but you're not feeling confident. You're not playing well. You go out to Game 7. What do? You score a goal that's going 3 feet wide on an excellent tip. You have an assist. You drive the net and really create the lane.
He made the whole play from start to finish
for your partner. There's a good look at the goal courtesy of ESPN. That was at the end of a power play, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So he gets demoted to PP2, and then he goes out and scores a goal to set the tempo 5 minutes into this hockey game. I mean, look, I said on the show yesterday, I thought the team that scored first would win. I really did, and I really believed that. So
also, I do want to shout out Singsy. I don't know if he's in the chat today, but Singsy did have Verhaeghe anytime goal scorer and first goal scorer in this game. So
that probably
made a big payday for Singsy.
Made a couple of bucks for some people that listen. So,
late night last night.
Look again, Paul Maurice. He pulls a lever, changes up his power plays, gets rewarded. This time of year, those things come under the microscope. If Florida's power play goes 0 for 2 last night, then maybe people are questioning, well, why did you change your power play units before Game 7, right? So I just give Carter Verhaeghe a lot of credit for having, the gumption to pull himself together in Game 7 and put on a big performance like that. It was well deserved. The accolade and the the way they were talking about him and the way that he'll be remembered from this playoffs.
Yeah. What you're talking Verhaeghe or Maurice?
No, Verhaeghe.
Yeah. Well, you said shout to Paul Maurice too for pulling those strings, but definitely wanted to shout out Paul Maurice also. I don't know if everyone saw this, but I watched his interview last night with SVP right after winning, and it is about 6.5 minutes, 6 minutes 41 seconds, and it is worth the watch. I mean, Paul Maurice, we all know what he's been able to do with the media this postseason, how funny he can be, how comedic he can be, and maybe sometimes it's him trying to be a little bit of a distraction from the players when things weren't going well. But this was a wholehearted interview, very genuine. One of the quotes that stands out is SVP asking Paul Maurice how this trophy will change him. And he essentially said a trophy shouldn't define how I'm treated or how I treat people. And you could tell when he lifted that trophy, it was just something different, right? Like it was a really cool moment with Emily too. Emily was in the middle of asking him a question, and even she said, "You've been so kind with the media. Literally, go lift the Stanley Cup right now." And it was just jubilation. It was awesome. But I really recommend anyone to go watch that little 6-minute interview. And with that, I also did want to shout out one of our very loyal listeners who I was actually DMing with last night. Chef Richard had told me to basically, if I ever do have a chance to interview Paul Maurice, ask about Richard's Pizza. And 2 years ago, Paul Maurice went into Chef Richard's pizzeria to congratulate him on being 19 years sober. And a couple of days ago, Chef Richard actually became 21 years sober. And, while we're celebrating Paul Maurice, I also wanted to shout out one of our very loyal listeners in Chef Richard for being 21 years sober. And I think, the next couple of days, we're going to see a lot of Paul Maurice and how he's a stand-up guy and a class act. And that's just one of those examples on how he's impacted one of our members of our community. So I just wanted to shout that out really quick. And, here's the moment with Emily Kaplan and Spencer Knight. Good to see him out there too with the Stanley Cup too, right? Because he's been absent for a bit, dealing with his own battles and whatnot. But here's that moment with Paul Maurice where it is just awesome seeing him enjoy that. And you could feel it through the screen. And sorry for kind of taking that over, Colby, but just wanted to give that shout out really quick to Chef Richard and give Paul Maurice a little bit of credit or flowers.
I mean, watching, I got to tell you, watching these celebrations, it's really cool. I mean, it's a really, really cool thing. And look, especially you see a guy like Nick Cousins who goes out on the ice, and all the players who just go out on the ice. And look, I've been there, right? I know what that's like. Those last couple of minutes when you're waiting for the game to end. Obviously, our team was up a couple of goals, so I felt better about it. But you're in the locker room, it's 2-1. They're pushing. If you're a Florida Panther, you're trying to get your gear on, whether you're Spencer Knight, whether you're Nick Cousins, Gadovich, you name it. And then you get to go out on the ice and celebrate. And look, I think you just really appreciate what your teammates have gone through. I know some guys played more than others, but there are a number of guys who are out on the ice last night that don't play at all. And you just have all this gratitude for, your teammates and what they've done and how hard it's been for them. I remember seeing Mark Recchi and, guys like him and Chara, Bergeron. I mean, these guys are absolute warriors in the game of hockey. And then watching it last night and, watching the order of the way they gave the cup. I mean, look how early Kyle Okposo got the cup. This is a guy who came over half, at the trade deadline and didn't even play all the games in the playoffs. And, what'd they give him the cup? Third? Was it after Bob? After Bob, they gave him the cup. I mean, that just shows you. And it shows you the level of respect for a guy like him. I think a lot of people were curious what was Barkov going to do after he got the cup. Who was he going to give it to? I thought Bob was the logical next choice, but I was curious then after that who it would go to, right? And I do think one of my favorite things about hockey is that you kind of watch the cup get passed around. Every player touches the cup, including guys who didn't play one game. Then the coach just touch it.
Mhm.
Actually, sometimes the equipment guys touch it first, then coaches, and then GM, and then, the owner will get his time with it. In other sports,
Owner first.
they literally hand the trophy
Yeah.
to the owner, right? And I just think that's one of the things that sort of, separates the culture of hockey. And I know there are some owners that own in the NHL and the NFL, or, other sports. The NBA, is there a dual NBA? Yeah, well, the new owner in Utah owns NBA, and I'm sure there's others that I'm not thinking of, right?
Mhm.
But I just love how, that works out and how that goes, and just watching that on TV and watching the guys lift it and have their moment. It's cool. It brings up old memories for me. It brings up, very, very cool, moments for
Nostalgia.
all these guys,
Yeah.
nostalgia. But look, it was hard, and you can see it. Now let me ask you one question here.
Yeah. I do want to tell a quick story too after, if that's cool. But
You said something on social media a couple of days ago that if Florida wins, it's more of a sigh of relief than anything else.
Mhm.
Now that they've won and you saw them celebrate and you saw their fans celebrate, do you still think it's more of a sigh of relief than anything else, or do you maybe think nobody now cares about how they won and it's just, pure joy?
To be honest, I wanted to come on here and say that. Like, at no point in that game last night did it feel like that was a team that just let a 3-0 lead slip away. And the way they won that game, the way it felt, everything after, no one's gonna remember now this 0-3 hole. I mean, it'll be talked about for sure, but because the fact that Edmonton didn't get it done, that now kind of goes away, right? I think people will look back on this series maybe 10 years from now and just remember that Florida won it in 7, you know? But I think still, if you're a fan in that building, being in that building and knowing how much Edmonton pushed at the end, there still is that deep breath, like, thank God we didn't blow this. But for the players going what they went through, it is all just pure joy. And I don't think I was wrong for saying that in the time that I said it, but I'm definitely wrong for saying it with how it went down, if that makes sense, which I think it does. But I did also want to share a quick story. We were talking about Kyle Okposo before, and I tweeted it out last night, but I grew up in Syosset, Long Island, where the Islanders practiced for many years. And I played a lot of my middle school hockey games there, my high school hockey games there. And oftentimes I would leave a game early to go to a travel game because middle school hockey, high school hockey, it's not like very serious on Long Island. And, I remember in 2009, I think it was Okposo's like first full season in the NHL. I was getting off the ice of a middle school game early, like leaving around the second period to take my skates off, put my shoes on, and go to a travel game. It was something I did often. And I was in the locker room alone, taking off my tops, taking off my skates. And my dad walked through the door and said, I met someone in the lobby who wants to come in here. And I was like, okay, who? And it was Kyle Okposo. And Okposo just sat with me and my dad in the locker room as I took my shoulder pads off, my elbow pads off, and my skates off, and talked to us for like 10 minutes. I don't know how they started talking in the lobby of the practice rink, but I thought it was, something that was at the time so unbelievably cool to have essentially like a one-on-one moment as a 13-year-old kid with an NHL player, like sitting in a locker room. And it was a core memory that I have carried with me. And I wanted to approach Okposo when he was scratched one of the games at MSG and kind of tell him that story, because I don't know if he would remember that, but I didn't really have the chance to do it because he was talking to 2 or 3 people. But when you see guys like that win, genuine good people, it was year 17 for him in his career. It's just something that makes you happy as a person, right? So I always appreciate when guys are cool with their time and give other people their time. And Okposo is, one of those who always does that. And it seems like a lot of Islander fans have stories like that about Kyle Okposo from his time here. So just wanted to share that as well. But back to your original question. Yes, it doesn't fucking matter how they did it. They won it in 7, and they should celebrate as much as they could.
And the fact that they're in a warm weather climate, I have a feeling they're going to be having, not that you wouldn't in a cold weather climate, not that I guess it would matter anyway, because it's warm everywhere. Now that I'm thinking about the fact that we're basically at July 4th weekend here, and even if it was mid-June, but these guys are going to have a good time. They're probably going to end up in Miami. It seems like, Vic, I just sent you a text message.
See the video of Lawrence last night at 2 a.m. on the ice, just in shorts, no t-shirt, throwing a beer on the ice, like just kind of celebrating by himself. That was awesome.
Vic, if you could get that tweet that I just sent you teed up, and we could show it on the show, because it looks like they're kind of up and at it early already this morning. And while we wait for that, let's just talk Edmonton Oilers for a minute here, and kind of where do they go? What does it look like? We've heard all the rumors about Draisaitl wanting an extension.
There's a fake tweet going around too, like a fake Pierre LeBrun tweet saying that Draisaitl said he wants out or something.
Yeah.
Don't buy that.
Look, Edmonton, they've got 7 UFAs, forwards. They've got 2 UFA defensemen, Desharnais being sort of the quote unquote notable one. I can't imagine they bring him back. Broberg's an RFA. They'll re-sign him. But look, the Edmonton Oilers, kind of got to go back to the drawing board, and they've got to continue to figure out ways to surround McDavid and Draisaitl, and Hyman really at this point. I mean, Hyman is a household name. But I do think, they need to continue to look at, how to fortify their back end, because last night we saw the Kulak, we talked about the CC Kulak pair, the bad read, the lack of communication on the goal that cost them. So hell of a season for them, though. I mean, it really is. They started in last place, not started, but they were in last place early. They have a coaching change. They're down 0-3. They claw back from that. They fought through Dallas. I mean, the amount of times I picked against Edmonton to win is kind of funny when I think about how off my picks were throughout the playoffs this year. I probably never gave them the respect that they deserve, but I did always leave the caveat that they have Connor McDavid, and we saw Connor McDavid, go to another level. There's no game 7 without Connor McDavid, undoubtedly speaking. Him and Stuart Skinner were the most important 2 players on their team in games 4-5. And then Skinner was good in 6. McDavid gets shut out in game 6 and 7. But, what do you think about the Conn Smythe, Johnny? Do you feel like that was the right decision? I mean, he's basically near unanimous. It is true that this is an award for the entire playoffs, not just for the Stanley Cup final. It is voted on by like 16 writers. The ballots are available. Frank Saravalli's posted on Twitter, so you can see who voted for who. But, do you feel like McDavid, Barkov, Bobrovsky was sort of the right pecking order there, or what would you have done?
Well, I think it was actually McDavid, Barkov, Forsling, Bobrovsky. I think that was the order.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that was the order of the voting. But listen, like it's kind of like the argument: does the Hart Trophy go to a guy, or the Norris Trophy go to a guy whose team like doesn't make the play? Not that that's the same. Connor McDavid had 20 more points than Alexander Barkov. 20. Like it's not a small margin. McDavid was unbelievable, and what he did in games 4 and 5 is historic. Like, he did his part for the most part in this series. Was Barkov unbelievable the whole final? He was good. Was he unbelievable? No. Was Bobrovsky unbelievable the whole final? No. Like, how could you not give it to McDavid just based on everything he had done to this point and willing them back into it? Like, we're now sitting here talking about a great fucking series because of what Connor McDavid did for 2 games.
I agree.
Like that shouldn't be forgotten. Like,
if this would have ended in 5 games, I think Bob becomes the guy because how 1,000%. Good he was all playoffs. But it's not a slight against Bob, but McDavid broke a Gretzky record. What he did in the point with his points. I mean, it's
42 points in the playoffs.
To me, it was clear to like they got it right in my opinion, and I really do believe they got it right. McDavid doesn't come back out on the ice to accept the award. Something that
as well.
Something that J.S. Giguère did do when he won the Conn Smythe, when his team lost to the Devils. You're okay with that? That doesn't bother you?
I don't listen. I was 7 years old when J.S. Giguère did it. I don't know what the emotion really was like, but I would not want to put a player through that.
I agree. Listen, I have no issue with it either.
I've
seen people that have said that. I've seen people that said bad leader, bad.
I don't think it's a classless move.
I agree.
Let the
listen,
guy fucking
here's the
be in the
thing.
moment. He just
And
lost
how
in
about
game
not
7.
just that? Let the Florida Panthers have their moment.
That too.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All
That's a good
anybody
point.
did was complain about how heavy handed the Oilers coverage was. It was McDavid. And a lot of it was. And that's just the reality. When you have the greatest superstar in a sport playing in something, he's going to get more coverage. All right. But the reality is I didn't mind it. Let Florida celebrate on the ice. What do you need to bring Connor McDavid back out on the ice for that for? I'm completely unfazed by it. I have no like I don't care one way or the other. He made a decision. I'm not thinking twice about it. If people want to talk about it because they need something to talk about today, go for it. But I'm certainly not going to bash the guy or call him any names for how that went down last night.
I would do the same exact thing if I were in his situation. He honestly, he probably didn't even know or care at the time. You know, you think that's what happened? Like someone in the locker room up to Connor and said, "Hey, you just won the Conn Smythe. If you want to go grab it." Like I don't think anyone's that room is. Listen, I've lost a lot more than I've won, and I've never been in an NHL locker room in a situation like that. But I could tell you that room was probably dead silent for maybe 30 minutes. Would be my guess.
You just played 100+ games. It's July 1. Okay, not quite, but you get my point. Okay. Yeah. It's July. You have nothing to show for it. If you don't win the last game of the season, as Billy Beane said, but is the truth, nobody remembers it. Nobody's going to remember Edmonton's comeback, okay? No, all anybody are going to talk about is McDavid still doesn't have a Stanley Cup. So, the reality is you now have to sit there and reflect July and August. And then in September, you start making your way back, into the facilities. This is going to be 8 weeks to get yourself healthy and get yourself ready for next season.
I wanted to address with that point one comment in the chat from earlier. This is from Cat Dad Gamer. All the coverage of Edmonton and McDavid propping him up as the savior and godlike made me disgusted and even hate McDavid. It's sad, but he's not Gretzky, and people need to stop making him so. What do you think of that?
I disagree. Wholeheartedly disagree. All season, I beg and I plead for games on 1 p.m. on Sundays on ABC or 3 p.m. on Sundays on ABC with Connor McDavid. I think a massive part of the United States doesn't get a chance to see the brilliance and what Connor McDavid is. I've had the great fortune of being between the benches for games that Connor McDavid plays in. He's a different player than everybody else. There's other players, whether it be Nate McKinnon, whether it be Cale Makar, whether it be Sasha Barkov. There are other superstar player, Hall of Fame player, Stanley Cup winners in the NHL. Nobody has the skill or the ability that Connor McDavid has. So I couldn't disagree more with that. Listen, that's his opinion. And who am I to tell him if something bothers him? I'm not here to tell you what should or shouldn't bother you. So I don't have any issue with that bothering him, but I do not have that effect. It does not have that effect on me. I think that you sell the star, you sell the name. We are in the entertainment business, and I know Florida fans don't like to hear this, but in South Florida, it's not a big hockey market. You're not bringing in a national audience, okay? It's not. You have diehard Panther fans, people that have been there. They've been in the buildings through the thick and the thin, right? But it's not a regional team, and it's certainly not a national team. Connor McDavid has national and global star power, whether it be here in North America, whether it be in Scandinavia, whether it be in Russia. If you like hockey, you know who Connor McDavid is. He brings eyeballs to the sport, to the game. So I get it. We work in that industry, Johnny. And so I 100% understand it.
With that too, though, I think Matthew Tkachuk has become, personality-wise as well, a very marketable and global, possibly sensation. No? I think people outside of the hockey world are starting to, when they think of hockey, think of Matthew Tkachuk early on as one of the faces of the league. Like last night, also, again, everything in that postgame that he said was unbelievable. He says the right things. The way he carries himself is outstanding. He's a great ambassador for hockey, I believe. And I know there are people who hate him and hate the way he plays, but it's just because he plays a hard game and a heavy style. Like, he's a guy that you want to have on your team. But I mean, we're talking about a smaller market in Florida and a bigger market in Edmonton, or hockey wise. And the quote that Tkachuk had after the game of, for my fans back in Calgary, I couldn't let Edmonton win, and that's something that I think is awesome too. And Tkachuk understood that in the moment, and the way he went about himself last night in the postgame. It was great seeing the Tkachuk family have that celebration. And, his brother Brady, who in the postgame was asked a couple of questions about Brady not playing a playoff game yet and what his playoff experience will be like when he gets there. And he wanted to make it all about his brother Matthew. And that's just something I wanted to add too with the McDavid conversation, because, I'm guilty of it. I don't talk about Matthew Tkachuk nearly as much as I should. And I think he deserves that. And maybe that will be more of a thing now that they've won the cup.
Listen, the Florida Panthers have been the best team for a majority of the season, and nobody outside of the hockey world talks about them. They're not getting primetime TV audience. They're not getting the Chicago Blackhawks get more national games than the Florida Panthers. Okay. I mean, again, tells you anything you need to know about audience and the way you can drive eyeballs based on where a team is located and what the interest is in and around that state and city. So it's call a spade a spade. It really is. Now, I don't agree with you that Tkachuk has become.
Yeah, I'm seeing the comments in the chat too. But dude, Tkachuk is going on Pat McAfee. He's doing all these big time shows.
He's got a great personality.
Yeah,
he's not.
But that's what I said.
He's not afraid to show his personality,
and that's what I said,
which I think is great. But again, I don't. I do think he's a star. And I do think he's one of the stars, especially of U.S. hockey. And I think a lot of that has to do with his last name. Listen, he's already got, a first-class last name. His father should be in the Hall of Fame. And we're waiting to see that happen when it does happen. But, look, anybody who's watched hockey for the last 30, 40 years, they know the last name Tkachuk. And now all of a sudden there are these two new Tkachuks. One's an assistant captain, one's a captain. Both of them will punch you in the face on their way to scoring 30 goals, right? So, look, I think we might part a little bit as far as, the level of superstar that he's become. But
I did say personality, and I don't want.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying we're not arguing here. It's okay.
No, you're getting the chat.
Okay, well, listen, people hear what they want to hear, Johnny. Yeah. They hear what they want to hear. Okay, I paid Stuart Skinner a compliment on social media last night, and I said the one goal was soft, and you would have thought that I said something about the guy's mother, the way people responded to me. You hear what you want to hear. So I just think it's part of the larger conversation and the frustration for Florida fans as to why, the Oilers got more coverage, why, McDavid got more coverage and talked about more and this and that. It's just the way that, the entertainment business works. It really is. And that's nothing against Florida. It's nothing against the diehards. I mean, look how many Edmonton Oilers fans were in the building last night. Right. That means a lot of season ticket holders for the Florida Panthers were willing to part ways with their seats. I mean, there were thousands of Oilers jerseys.
Mr. National Anthem. What'd you make of that anthem battle?
I thought it was awesome. I thought it was really cool.
Incredible.
I thought it was really, really cool. I thought the crowd was alive on both sides. You had the Canadian people singing their anthem, the Americans singing ours. Two great songs. I've talked about
how the Panther fans are booing "Oh Canada."
I thought it was cool. I really did. When the fans are getting into it like that, and the emotion of it is drawing in, I love all that. So, look, great series. We said it would go 7. I think most people predicted 6 or 7 games. It didn't look like it was going to happen, Johnny. It happened. It was tight down the stretch. It had everything. It had major ebbs and flows. It had superstar plays. It had plunger plays. We didn't mention Warren Fogle at all. He had a great series, I thought. Connor Brown stepped up and had a good playoff. Matthias Janmark, a UFA. What are they going to do with him, Edmonton? Are they going to go out and re-sign him? I mean, he came through in big moments.
I was calling him Jan-Marc Messier this morning.
Florida has a lot of decisions to make, and they've got about 3 or 4 days to do it. I mean, Bill Zito has to basically reconstruct his entire back end if he loses those 3 guys. And is OEL going to take a team-friendly deal? Is Kulikov going to take team-friendly money? I think Mikkola took like 3.5 or something, or 275. I forget his number. Is he now going to get $4 million, maybe $4.5 million? Remember, when you win, your value goes up. If you're a $3.5 million guy coming off a Stanley Cup team, now you're getting $4 million. If you're 4, now you're getting 4.5. That stuff adds up on the cap. So Bill Zito has a lot to do. The Edmonton Oilers also have a lot of work to do, including figuring out who their next GM is going to be. Maybe it's going to be Jeff Jackson, but I think the next couple of days are going to be crazy. We're going to have all that for you coming live from Vegas. We're going to do a lot of draft coverage. Obviously, we've got some big name prospects that are going to be visiting with us on Thursday. And then maybe Friday, we have potentially an NHL head coach lined up. Things are a little bit fluid. So if you are enjoying all this coverage, make sure you subscribe to the Daily Faceoff YouTube. Their show, Daily Faceoff Live, will be at noon every day, okay? Coming out from the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas. We're going to come on right after them. We originally told you we wouldn't be on till 1 p.m. Eastern, but we are going to come on right after DFO Live. So DFO Live goes from about 12 to 12:35. Expect us to be on by about 12:40 every day Eastern, live from Las Vegas. We'll be on from 12:40 to 1:40, maybe 2 hour, 15 minutes like we normally do. Draft coverage. We'll talk about if anybody signs over the next couple of days. What are we hearing? Frank will be in and out of the shows to keep us updated. So like the episode, give us a subscribe on the YouTube page. The more you like our episodes, the more they rise up. We really appreciate all that. It helps us with the algorithm. But look, we've got a Stanley Cup champion, and we want to show you this picture from this morning. It's Barkov in the back of a golf cart. Looks like Matthew Tkachuk is in front of him. And then is that Keith Tkachuk, Big Walt, driving
yeah, it looks like it.
The golf cart? So it looks like fun on Las Olas this morning. These guys do not look like they've slept a lot. So we'll be keeping an eye on that.
And I just saw another picture on social media from David R. Matthew Tkachuk is lifting the cup right now on the second floor of Elbow Room.
So there you go. You knew they were going to get there. And you knew that, they were going to have a good time, and we'll see the cup in Vegas. I mean, it'll be there for the award show, I would think. Right. So, that's also going to be in Vegas. So look, Johnny, let's put a bow on the game and let's get into some news. And then I know we both got a jet. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts about the Stanley Cup final before we move on and talk some news and notes, and maybe a little shout out to the Hershey Bears for winning the Calder Cup. But final thoughts on Game 7 on the Stanley Cup series.
It was really just a couple of shout outs for me. Adeline, excuse me. Adeline Bidenbeck, the director of communications for the Florida Panthers. She is incredibly nice, so accommodating every time that we deal with Florida. Steve Goldstein, who's been there for so long, friend of ours, who we'll try to have on the show at some point too. Katie Engelson, a friend. So many people and so many nice folks in that organization that were very, very, very kind and went out of their way a lot for me personally when the Rangers played the Panthers, and just last year covering the Panthers in the Stanley Cup final. So very happy to see them get their Stanley Cup. And I do want to shout out one of my best friends, Chase Prisky, who did win the Calder Cup last night with the Hershey Bears. Chase was also the first ever player from Florida to suit up and play a game for the Florida Panthers, which was 2 seasons ago. So I'm sure it was a very emotional night for him. He won the Calder Cup and he watched the Florida Panthers win the Stanley Cup. I have not heard back from him yet. I texted him last night. I'm sure he's still out partying. But I'm curious to hear what he has to say about the Panthers finally getting it done. But no more thoughts in the game. Just got to shout out some of those people and everyone in the Florida organization that has been kind to me, the players especially too. I've been in that locker room a couple times this season, and whenever I walked in there, Nick Cousins would scream, "Johnny boy, good to see you." And Montour was always very kind. Like that team was just an unbelievable team to be around, and they deserve it. And very happy for a lot of those guys. But Colby, any final word before I kind of go into Parasso and we do some little news here?
Let's get into the notes so we can get moving. I know you got to pack and get to the airport.
Yeah,
Has your
my flight already got pushed back, so it's gonna be a fucking
where are you at with it right now?
It says I was supposed to take off at 2:20. Now it says 3:38, and my connection, I have not checked yet if that's been affected. So might have to put a rain check on dinner tonight in Vegas, Colby. I know you're going to take me out for a nice meal, but maybe you're behind this actually, and this is your way of getting out of dinner with me.
I've got us a reservation at Catch, and you're going to probably leave me high.
Colby's worst nightmare. But let's get into some news presented by Perasso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care. Made in Italy since 1948, Perasso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations. So get 15% off at Perasso-USA.com with our promo code Hockey15 in all caps, Hockey15. And now the playoff beards will be coming off. We will see a lot of these guys clean shaven over the next couple of days. One of the beards that stands out, Adam Henrique, had a great one for Edmonton. But let's get into some news. Before the game last night, Linus Ullmark was traded to the Ottawa Senators for the 25th pick in the 2024 draft. Marcus Selleck and Jonas Korpisalo come back in that trade, 25% retained for Korpisalo. What do you make of Ullmark going to the Ottawa Senators?
Well, look, I don't think I don't love this deal. And the reason I don't love this deal is because there's no extension. Forget the return. Let's just talk about Ullmark going to Ottawa. You know, Ottawa did this a couple of years ago with Alex DeBrincat. And how did it work out? Okay. It hasn't been a winning situation. It hasn't been a good situation. I know they have new coach. I know they've got a new general manager with Steve Staios. But it's concerning to me that they're taking a swing. And it wasn't that big of a swing. I mean, the return was what the return was because you're buying a UFA, basically. You're buying a guy who's a year out from being a UFA. All right. But I just don't know if you gave up a first-round pick, you gave up a bottom 6 forward, a guy that I'm not overly familiar with. You retain 25% of Korpisalo's money because he's got a couple of years left on his deal. So he's not at $4 million. Now he's at $3 million. But overall, again, I don't love it because they couldn't get an extension done. And that tells you Ullmark is going in there, you know, not all in, right? And I don't blame him, by the way. Players want to be UFAs. UFA is where you get your payday, where you get overpaid, all right? So I don't blame Ullmark, but I just think that, you know, if he wasn't willing to give you that extension, well, maybe, you know, you'd think twice about it. And yes, now you have a year to convince him to sign an extension. But I don't know, like these goaltenders, man, they're few and far between at that level. And I just feel like to give up the first, to eat money on Korpisalo, to give up a roster player, you bought a rental. You bought a 1-year rental for now. And again, has Ottawa shown a good track record as of late of keeping guys like that? No, they haven't.
So I know this is about Ottawa, but my concern was why the hell would Boston want Korpisalo with that money?
Well, like I don't think that they did. I think that that's just a situation where they had to probably take him back. Okay. And the fact that he's down, he got 25%. Now he's a $3 million goalie. Yeah. They may flip him because they have Brandon Bussey. Yeah. They could flip Korpisalo, or they'll just have a goalie tandem and you know, have Korpisalo in a system where maybe he gets protected a little bit more. But I'm sure they didn't want Korpisalo. I'm sure that was, you know, part of the deal. We'll give you the first, but you'll take a bad contract. We'll eat a little bit of money. And that's how they probably looked at it.
And for the Senators, I mean, I thought it was a good trade for them. Goaltending has been an issue for them for quite some time. And
I mean, but
listen, this is a desperate team now to just change the tone around the organization, right? Like they've been somewhat of a joke the last 2 years or so. And
they have been a joke. There's no doubt they've been a joke.
And with Brady Tkachuk as the captain too, like, you know, I know he's been rumored to be on the trade market, but I know that Ottawa is not looking to deal him. Frank confirmed that on our show a couple of weeks ago. But you got to think a guy like that who's watched his brother now playing the Stanley Cup final 2 years in a row, like they want to get something going here. And when you go out and get Ullmark, it's at least a sign that's pointing in the right direction of at least we have a goalie that we can trust and rely on going into it. Granted, Ullmark has not necessarily been the 55 to 58 games in a season goalie, but a Vezina winner, you know, a guy who's looking to be the guy, I think it's a good start.
And I hope it works out. I hope they can get him on an extension, because if you did it for 1 year and he walks, it's Alex DeBrincat 2.0. And you have to trade him or trade him at the dead. I mean, what happens? Let's just play this out, and then I want to move on because I know we're running up against the clock here. But let's just say, let's say he won't sign an extension, and let's say he's playing really well. Do you have to trade him at the trade deadline if he won't go for an extension? So I don't think they're a playoff team. Maybe you're willing to bet your life on it again.
If they're not in the playoff picture, then definitely trade him.
But what if they? But I'm just saying, what if they are a bubble playoff team, okay, and they don't have a deal done? Do you have to walk away from him if he's going to UFA? If he won't sign with you, what does that say?
I think in that case you have to, right?
So I'm just saying,
your hands are literally tied if that's the scenario.
You're creating a situation that is going to come with a headache later, in my opinion, without an extension done. And you look, and Boston gets a way less value on the player because the extension's done. This is what I've said about Marner. Even if Marner's willing to waive, right, but there's no extension, you're buying a UFA. You're literally buying a rental player. Rental player prices are different than players with term. So we'll see how that plays out. We will see how that plays out. Let me bring up another thing from yesterday. The Phoenix Coyotes, man. I mean, or the Arizona Coyotes, the Phoenix Coyotes, whatever. This guy
couldn't do this 2 months ago.
He has to be the worst owner in all of sports. I mean, are you kidding me? The things that are coming out now, they didn't have the right permit. They didn't have the right lawyers. They thought they'd go in and get this auction, and then it only been approved for like a family skating complex, not an NHL 17,000 seat arena. Nobody wants to work with this guy. He turns around, pulls the plug on the American League team playing at Mullet Arena. I mean, I feel bad for the Tuscan Roadrunners because this cheap asshole.
Tucson.
What did I say?
You said Tuscan just before you get shredded.
Tucson, sorry. Like, he is probably going to take this out on his American League team, and his budget for that team is probably going to become a shoestring budget. The teams that are not owned by the NHL team, it's never a good situation. And you can only imagine what kind of infighting there could be now between Utah and Tucson, excuse me.
Wait, was that real? Wait, what? Did you see that again?
Now you've got me confused.
It's Tucson, Arizona.
Right, but they're not the Tuscan Roadrunners?
The Tucson Roadrunners. What?
What's their American League team called here, Johnny?
The Roadrunners.
What city?
Tucson.
No, Tuscan Roadrunners. You're wrong. So you're correcting me and you're wrong. So try again.
This is all time.
You get $0 for passing go.
No, this is an all-time fuck up on your part.
Are they not called the Tuscan Roadrunners?
It's pronounced Tucson.
Oh, that's how you pronounce Tucson, Arizona?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I collect no dollars for passing go. Good for you.
Oh, that is so good.
I'm looking it up and I'm like, seriously?
It's
you keep saying it, you're confusing me. So, but hold on a sec. How bad is this guy going to now run this American League team? And what kind of budget is he going to give the American League team that is now not owned by the NHL team? Terrible situation for prospects. Terrible situation. I saw that he's already trying to move the team to Reno, Nevada, the American League team. I don't know why would this guy continue to own an American League team? He walked away from NHL ownership. This literally didn't even get through the season before this guy blew this up and walked away. We all knew he was keeping his $1 billion and he was going to walk away. There was no way he was ever giving that $1 billion back to the NHL to reinstate that club ever. And now Arizona and Tempe or Scottsdale or whatever you want to call it, now they become like any other expansion city. You're going to have to put in your expansion fee. By the time that comes, you're probably looking at $1 billion+ You're going to have to build an arena that doesn't exist. I would say you're looking at least 10 years before hockey's in Arizona, minimum. What do you think?
Who knows if it'll ever come back, honestly. It just seems like this whole thing is a total disaster. What was the initial plan? Like 26, 27, they wanted to have it return?
They said within
that's what Frank
5
told us.
years,
Yeah.
5 years, but by the 26-7 season, you had to be at least halfway there.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm gonna send a text a little bit later today to my good buddy John Leonard, who plays in Tucson with the Roadrunners, just see what he's hearing, what he's thinking. I spoke to him earlier in the year, and everything was up in the air for them too. So it's got to be so difficult to be a player right now in that organization, just not knowing where your future lies and what's in store, what's ahead. But with the way that everything has gone with Arizona, I don't think the NHL would be rushing to get back there, right? Like, especially after this news yesterday.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Like, I know they've had some success there 10 years ago.
Somebody could get a stadium built, but nobody wants to work with that guy.
No.
Nobody. So just embarrassing. Look, I don't feel we were ripping them on this show, and honestly, I feel even better about the things that I said about everything to do with that situation now, based on how this has gone. It's really, really embarrassing. It is. Marullo, I hope that guy's never involved in sports again. I'm sure the owner of Utah will try to buy an American League team. They've had American League teams in Utah before. I think the Utah Grizzlies were an American League team. I know that was a basketball.
They're a coast team right now.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. But they've been in an American League team at times. So I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't try to go out like everyone else. The Colorado has their team in their backyard. Boston's got everybody pretty much has their American League team in their backyard at this point. At least half the teams do. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Utah try to get that East Coast League team back up to the American League. If that's what it truly is right now. I'll be honest, I don't follow that closely anymore, but I hope that happens. So, John, the last question that I want to ask you, and I'm jumping around.
Yep.
Are you betting your life? And Vic put this in our script here today, our outline. Are you betting your life that the Sens will make the playoffs again next season? Are you doing that again?
I've learned my lesson.
You have no faith that will happen next year?
I'm rooting. They're a fun team to root for. Like, I want to see them do well. Good friend Shane Pinto on that team. Have met a couple of those guys. Josh Norris is a really cool dude. Brady, I've met a couple of times. Like, I'm rooting for that team to do well, but it's hard to sit here and say confidently that I think the Ottawa Senators will make the playoffs. No. So I'm going to say no right now. But the last thing I want to bring up, rumor-wise, a good friend of mine who's been on the show, Dan Powers from Empty Netters, tweeted out yesterday that he thinks the Devils will be getting Brett Pesce. And I was talking to him a little bit yesterday. Another friend of mine who knows the Brodeur family pretty well, they're assuming it's going to be a 6x6 around that ballpark for Brett Pesce with the Devils come July 1 when free agency opens up. So maybe we can talk to Frank about that a little bit.
Well, here's what I know about that situation.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to be in the New York, New Jersey area.
He's from Irvington, Westchester, I believe.
So he wants to be in that area. Which one of those teams it ends up being, we'll see. But he always wanted to be in that area. I don't know if he makes what, 4 and something right now.
He made a little over 4, I believe. Yes.
I don't know if I would give a guy who's had the injury problems that he has 6x6. I think that might be too much for him. I think his number should be more in the 5s. I could see 5.25, 5.5 if you're giving him that many years, but he's had a lot of injury troubles. And he got his last contract, the one that he's playing on right now, after having only played 70 games in the NHL. He's had like 3 or 4 operations in the last 4 or 5 years. So, I'd be weary to give him too much money, but he is a good right shot defenseman. So I do think there's a lot of validity to that rumor. I do think he's going to end up in the tri-state area.
Dan actually isn't wrong often. Dan doesn't put a lot out there, but he's
we'll see if it ends up being the Devils or if it is one of these other teams. But I know for a fact, just talking to some agents yesterday, one who used to represent him in particular, and he told me that he always has wanted to go back to that area. That is where he wants to be, and that is where he wants to play. And so he probably would get more money on the open market, but he's not truly on the open market. When you have a limited amount of teams, that's where it goes. So let's get to Betway, and let's finish our last show on home turf before we head out to Vegas here, Johnny, with Betway. They're still running the promotion. You could still get a free $200 bet. Scan the QR code on your screen, create a new account, and then your account will be set up to make whatever bet that you want. You can bet as little or as much as you want. You'll get reimbursed up to $200. My recommendation is, take that free $200 bet, make a futures bet. Let's look 12 months or actually less than 12 months ahead, Johnny, and let's look at the odds to win the Stanley Cup next season. Right now, the Edmonton Oilers plus 800, the odds-on favorite to win the Stanley Cup. The Carolina Hurricanes, they've got a lot of work to do this summer. They're pretty high up there. I know Johnny's liking that plus 1,200 for his New York Rangers. They certainly are in their window to win. We hear Chris Drury is going to be busy this offseason. The Patrick Kane conversation that started on our show has picked up steam. So bet responsibly, available only outside of Ontario. Use it to make your futures bet. If you lose in 11 months, then you'll get reimbursed then. I think that's how it would work if you make a futures bet with your free bet, although I'm not 100% sure. Great show today. Great job in the chat. I'll take the big loss on not being able to pronounce Tucson, Arizona. I'll be honest with you. Never been to Tucson, Arizona. Only ever been to Tempe and Scottsdale.
Tucson is where the University of Arizona is, by the way.
Party foul on me. I've only ever been to ASU, and I'll tell you, man, it is a good time at ASU. Yeah. I think Coach Powers at ASU and that program is on the up and up, especially joining the new conference that they did. We will start our draft coverage tomorrow in Vegas. Stephen Ellis, the prospect guru from DFO, he's going to be on with us to start the show tomorrow. Just to set the table for the draft, and then stick with us. We will have more coverage throughout the week. We'll be on right after DFO Live. So that'll come on at noon Eastern. Okay. Mm-hmm. We'll come on around 12:40 or whenever it ends, and we'll chop it up with you for about an hour. Vic, you will not be in Vegas. Sorry about that, Johnny. Loser. I'll be sending you videos of all the dumb shit that Johnny does, and we will see everybody tomorrow.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe